Trollhunters Rise of the Titans is, for the majority of its runtime, a masterclass in how to write, create, present a lore movie. That just being a movie that relies very, very heavily on outside lore in order to work. And then for a very, very short bit of its runtime at the end, it becomes a masterclass in how to absolutely ruin the entirety of what came before it. Man, I loved this movie so much for so much of its runtime. And now I just want to forget that I ever watched it. Let's start off with just the basic plot of this one, and then what I liked, and then I'll talk about the one big thing that I hated about it. And that'll be more spoilery. I'll keep the rest more spoiler-free. Because, okay, you should still see the movie if you're, like, invested in the franchise. You should still watch the movie. It's not awful, and I hate the ending in part because I overthink things. If you can just turn your brain off and think, oh, everything will work out for the best, you'll be fine with it. But man, did it piss me off a lot. Basic plot of the movie is Duxie and Nari are still running from the other members of the Arcane Order who wish to take control of Nari's mind and use her to merge with her Titan. Because each one of them has a Titan, the three Titans. I think it was that they originally, like, created the Earth or something. I can't remember specifically. I apologize. But, like, they seemingly have the ability, if they all three rise, then reach the center of the universe and unite their power to remake the Earth anew without any of the life forms that are currently living on it. Wiping out everything and just starting over with a clean slate. And this was their plan the entire time. And that's why Nari changed sides. She didn't want them to destroy so much life. Because she's life. That's her whole thing. Of course she was going to change sides. The other two are just stupid, I guess. And Wizards ended with Duxie and Nari running and hiding from them. So when this movie starts out with Nari disguised, Duxie wasn't really disguised, but they're, hiding on a train, seemingly trying to slip off somewhere secretively, it makes sense that they would still be running. So it's a surprise when it turns out they're not. They've actually teamed up with the other heroes of Arcadia to set a trap for the other two members. A trap that utilizes Acaridian technology to neutralize magic so they can just beat the crap out of the other two Arcane Order members. Because they don't know how to fight without magic, right? And I cannot stress enough that this is a plan that absolutely would have worked. The entire conflict of this movie never would have happened. Except Toby screws up. Toby almost dooms the entire world. So now, they do manage to get Nari. After she... I'm not going to explain specifically how. She manages to give them a message that might help them fix things in the end. And their Titans do rise. And now they have to stop these Titans. And throughout this entire thing, Jim still isn't the Troll Hunter anymore, and he has to undergo an arc where he has to come to recognize that regardless of his doubts, regardless of his weaknesses, he is and always has been a hero. And once he does, our heroes are able to pull together and win the day, because of course they do, right? And then that's basically the story of this movie. There's some absolutely fantastic stuff here. The animation in this is gorgeous. The magic in this is gorgeous. It's so well realized. It's in line with the kind of magic that we've seen, the kind of magic effects that we've seen throughout the rest of this franchise, which, basically looks the same as the Acaridian tech. Which makes sense, I guess, lore-wise. That's beside the point. It looks great. This is a great-looking movie. And it's... like, the pace is kind of in line with something like Wizards. It's very fast-paced. But there are actually entire scenes where the characters just interact with each other like normal people. It's a quick movie. A lot of stuff is always happening. There's this dire tone, like this sense of dread permeating everything. It's clear that these characters know that they are on a timetable, that things are going to go bad if they don't act very, very soon. And yet it still manages to work in entire scenes where the characters are just reacting to the things that have happened to them up to this point and interacting with each other. It feels so refreshing. It feels more in line structurally with something like Trollhunters, while still having the fast pace and sense of danger that something like Wizards did at its heights. And while there are tons of characters here that the story has to juggle, it gives us just enough narration to set everything up, then it gives us just enough exposition to get the story of the movie going, and then it tells us everything else we need to know about the characters through their character interactions. It's some of the most natural feeling expositional dialogue I've ever seen. Like, it would definitely help if you have seen the other shows. You'll definitely understand these characters better if you have seen the shows. But I don't think you would need to watch this movie and get something out of it. If anything, stuff like seeing Steve interact with Aja would just make you want to go watch Three Below to see how Steve ended up with Aja, right? But for the purposes of this movie, their romance is sold really well. You immediately understand what these characters mean to each other, and their interactions are just as adorable here as they were back in Three Below. Though, and again, I don't want to get too spoilery, there is a plot line involving Steve in this movie that comes directly out of his interactions with her that could have been really weird, and it is kind of weird, but it never gets super weird, and it actually ends super wholesome. I liked it way more than I expected that I would, and it was actually pretty funny. Like Steve doesn't get to do a lot in this movie, it's mostly just that, but I think it worked. And it's so weird to say that. You'll know what I'm talking about if you've seen the movie. But what's great about it is that all of these characters are here, and all of them play a part. They all do something. They at least get one or two really good scenes a piece. Even Varvatos Vex shows up, and I'm just going to spoil it. I won't go into detail. It's something to look forward to if you're on the fence about the movie. He has a giant mech fight with one of the Titans. It was great. It was like a Pacific Rim style giant mech fight where you can feel the scale and the weight of these giant things that are fighting each other, and it was absolutely spectacular. And man, maybe the coolest thing about this entire franchise is the designs of the Titans. They're so good. They all look super unique and embody their elements so well. And man, you can just feel the scale and the power of these things. It's so good. There's so many scenes that are dedicated just to making these things seem powerful, to selling how dangerous these things are. It was awesome in the truest sense of the word. But the main emotional through line of this movie was Jim's journey to recognize himself as a hero even without his powers. And hinging the entire movie on that emotional through line was a fantastic idea, because that is naturally a thing that would be on his mind, a thing that he would have to deal with at this point in his life. It's in character for him to worry about that kind of thing, because he is a goody two-shoes, worrywart, I want to be there for everybody kind of character. And it also, it works for carrying the movie. It keeps the through line of the movie simple enough that all of this batshit stuff that's happening around it feels simpler and more streamlined because of it. And the movie takes itself super seriously, too. Characters that we have known since the beginning of this franchise give their lives to win this battle. Characters that we met much more recently give their lives to win this battle. And it hurt. Like, in the case of one of them in particular early on, and then one of them at the very end, it hurt a lot. And like I mentioned, Toby screws up at the beginning of the movie. He gets such a great moment to shine at the end that makes up for it. It was so good. It wrapped itself up so well. And yet it never feels too heavy, because there's this plot device that is implied is going to fix everything in the end. And this is where we're going to start getting into spoilery stuff. So I'm just going to say, if you don't want to get into spoilery stuff, I do think this movie is worth watching, even though I really hate the ending. I will warn you, I thought the ending was really bad. The movie's still really good for the most part, and you should watch it. It's a good movie. It had so much excellent stuff in it. Even Castle Camelot actually doing something instead of just being a set piece for like 2 episodes or whatever. It was very cool. That's the flying version of Castle Camelot, by the way. The cool one that I whined so much in my Wizards review about how they didn't do anything with it. But getting into the spoilers. This movie ends. Give you 5 more seconds to leave if you want. 3, 4, 5. Toby dies using the same magic neutralizer device that he screwed up the use of at the beginning to neutralize Balrog's magic, so that as Jim is having his big heroic moment and regains his powers and they fight, he's able to come in clutch and defeat them at the last moment and win the day. The entire Titan falls on him, and it's made of rock and lava. And it's a miracle that he lived as long as he did. He lives long enough to have a goodbye with the other characters. And throughout this entire thing, there's this, I think it was called a chronosphere or something, that Nari told us. Nari also dies in this movie, unfortunately. That really bummed me out, too. That one hurt, too. I didn't mention that one before. That one hurt, too. Because I really like her. Based on what she told them earlier in an earlier scene, and based on the name of this thing, you know time travel is going to be involved. Time travel is already an established thing in this franchise, that they're going to fix things somehow. So I just kind of assumed that Jim, because it's a stone, it turns out the chronosphere is powered by a stone, and of course he can incorporate stones into his amulet. I thought he was going to go back, like rewind things to back when the stuff on the train was happening, or right before, and warn Toby that he was going to screw up. And they'd just do it right that time and stop the Titan thing from even happening. Because that makes the most sense, right? That makes the most sense. Because the way this works is he's basically going to rewind himself into the version of himself from the point in time he goes back to. And unless I missed something, all of the characters knew exactly what he was going to do before he even said that he was going to do it. And instead he goes back to the first episode of Trollhunters and changes everything so that he ends up going for Claire sooner, to put it as ineloquently as possible. He starts to, what's his name? The teacher, the changeling teacher. Can't remember his freaking name. I can never remember his name. God damn it. He starts turning him and befriending him genuinely sooner. And also, bafflingly, sets it up so that Toby becomes the troll hunter instead of him. I love Toby. He's a good character. And he did have that big heroic moment at the end. But I cannot stress enough, he is the reason why all of this happened. Because he screwed up during that mission at the beginning. And no one ever holds him accountable for that. The movie does by killing him, I guess, technically. But none of the other characters hold him accountable for that. And Jim still has him go on every combat mission in the entire goddamn movie after that. Every single one. And I say this with all the love in my heart, because, like, again, I like the character. He would make a terrible troll hunter. Just the worst. All of the stuff with Gunmar is still going to happen. Like, that's still going to happen. Toby would be a terrible choice for troll hunter during all of that. And then on top of that, all of the specific things that happen over the course of this show, which doesn't really have much of a body count, I remind you. Not many people have died other than villains in this show, if anyone at all. I'm trying to remember. Like monster good guys, I guess, technically. Right? Prior to the events of this movie, anyway. So many characters were affected by the very specific things that happened as a result of Jim becoming the troll hunter and then everything else that happened after that. Like, background characters had their lives upended and eventually improved by what happened, right? So why would he go back that far? Like, yes, it is implied heavily that he's going to take a very active role in making sure things happen as close to how they happened originally as he can without everybody dying. But if he had just gone back to that initial thing on the train and fixed that, he wouldn't have to ensure that all this other stuff happens the right way. Like, it feels like he gave Toby the role of troll hunter to reward him for sacrificing his life in another timeline. I'm freaking out a little bit. I apologize. I probably seem like super freaking manic right now. But that's not Toby yet. He's not that person yet. Like Toby back then is going to get himself killed immediately as the troll hunter. I'm sorry, he just is. There's no way you can sell me Toby as the troll hunter. And ensuring that someone else becomes the troll hunter instead of him. Like, I know his arc in this movie was he doesn't need to be the troll hunter to be a hero. Jim's arc in this movie. But if he does want to try to keep things on course so that the same people do meet and form the same relationships that they did in the original timeline. Because remember, I mentioned Steve and Aja and how cute they are, how good a couple they are. They might literally never meet in this timeline. Because things could go differently with a fight with some monster because Toby's the troll hunter now and Steve dies. Or gets injured and his family moves out of town. Or something, right? That might never happen. And that surprisingly wholesome plotline that involved him doesn't happen either if that happens. And ensuring that someone else is the troll hunter, that they are the central figure in all of these historical events to come, makes it so much harder for Jim to ensure that the right events happen at the right time for the best result. Becoming the troll hunter again would give him so much more control of what's happening. Then there's the issue of stuff like, if his enemies realize that he has foreknowledge and is trying to manipulate things to get the good ending, they're not like NPCs in a video game. They're going to take advantage of that, and that's going to change things massively. Going back to change one key event as late in the timeline as he could get away with would have been objectively better. And I don't understand why they made the choice to have him do otherwise, except to just reference the first episode of the show. Like I said earlier, I don't think that this ending is going to ruin this movie for everyone. I don't even think it would ruin the movie for most people, but it certainly ruined the movie for me. I doubt I'll ever watch this movie again, and that's such a bummer, because I liked everything else about it so much. Everything from the animation to the voice work to just how the characters interacted with each other. These people felt so real. It was all so good. And then they ruin it by the end. Like, there's some half-assed talk before he goes back about how if they're really destined to end up this group, right? That they'll all come together again and it'll be fine. But you can't know that that'll happen. This isn't like in Wizards where it was clearly a closed time loop. He's going back specifically to change things. And we see him do it. I don't know, it just really bummed me out. I think it was just genuinely bad. And not even bad in like an incompetent way. Bad in a they didn't think this through even slightly kind of way. And that almost bugs me more, frankly. I don't know. If you guys have a different opinion regarding the ending of this movie, I'm probably not going to agree with you. You're probably not going to convince me, but I'd like to hear it. So I guess my sign-off for this one is, if you're a fan of the Tales of Arcadia series, you still need to see this movie. It is still mostly excellent. Truly, truly excellent. But I just can't get past the end. But, as per usual, I'd like to know, what do you guys think of Trollhunters Rise of the Titans if you have seen it? Let's get a discussion going in the comment section down below. And while you're down there, you might as well like the video, share it with anyone else you think would enjoy my content, subscribe. If you haven't, you can also check out the links to my various social medias, as well as to the many ways you can help out the channel. Those will be in the video description. But either way, this has been AJ22, and I will talk to you guys later.